What's up, guys? It's Diego from the Foot and Fist Sports Network here to talk about the Premier League aftermath from the fourth week of the Premier League. And there was no other game that surprised me more than Manchester City versus Liverpool. And I did expect City to go out there and have possession and really beat the hell out of Liverpool, and Liverpool have to play them on the counterattack. But I didn't expect it to be that much of a beatdown. And realistically, up until Mane got his red card, it was a pretty close game. Liverpool were actually doing a really good job of pressing City and getting them into a bit of trouble here and there. But once Mane got red carded, there was just absolutely no discipline when it came to pressing, basically. Everybody was just a little bit out of sorts on what exactly they were supposed to do. And it's not like they lost a defender. They lost a striker. So, I mean, it shouldn't have had that much of a difference. Yes, they shouldn't have been able to go at City from the very front line like they would against just about any other team if Mane was on the pitch. But they shouldn't have taken that much of a beating. You know what I mean? They shouldn't have left themselves that wide open, because when you are a man down, especially when you're losing 1-0, you have to close yourself down. You can't allow yourself to concede more goals, and hopefully you will get a goal on the counterattack. Liverpool simply did not do that. Ever since Mane got a red card, they absolutely shut down. They collapsed in a big way, and they conceded 5 goals. I mean, they conceded 4 goals after Mane, but still, that was just an atrocious performance from Liverpool, and one that really does have to show what Liverpool is really like. You know, when it comes to attacking, they are solid. They are solid if they have a player like Mane. And obviously, Coutinho not being in there, that is a big loss. But defensively, man, if one little thing gets out of place for them, they are completely shot. They have absolutely no quality in that defense. They just have no discipline. They just don't have what it takes to defend against a top team. Imagine what's going to happen if they defend against a team like Real Madrid. You know, if they somehow get past the group stage and face a team like them, what the fuck's going to happen? Hopefully for Liverpool, I obviously don't want this to happen. I hope they continue to be shit all season long. But if Liverpool do figure out what's up with them, then maybe they have a chance of getting in the title mix. But as of right now, from what I've seen this part of the start of the season, I do not have any faith or fear in Liverpool. I don't see them competing for the title in any way. Maybe they'll be like a top 4 contenders, but I see them finishing like top 5. But I mean, I just don't see them really doing much of anything. And City looked great. Obviously, they just absolutely ran over Jurgen Klopp. And the True Geordie, who I mentioned a lot in these videos, he actually had a really good point. You know, in his preview, he said, Jurgen Klopp, we know exactly what his style is. He does it against every team he plays against. But is Pep Guardiola going to be a little bit too smart for him? And historically, at least in the league, in the Premier League, Guardiola had suffered quite a bit against Jurgen Klopp. Klopp has actually had quite a bit of success against Guardiola. But this time, it was just absolutely no contest. You know, Guardiola outclassed him tactically. He outclassed him in terms of what players he had on the pitch. It was just an absolute beatdown from start to finish. There was just absolutely nothing Liverpool could do to keep themselves in that game. So, horrible performance for Liverpool. A good performance, obviously, from City. It's going to be a huge momentum build for them. Because, like I said in the prediction videos, whenever there's international breaks, everything is pretty much thrown out the window. All momentum is thrown out the window. Arsenal, who are in a bad skid, got themselves a win. Tottenham were having a bit of a hard time, got themselves a huge win. You know, that's just what it is. You know, whatever momentum you have before the international breaks, it does not matter when you come back. And we saw City now have the opportunity to build up momentum and really start to push forward. Hopefully not, because like I said a bunch of times, I am a United fan, so I hope that they do not get ahead of steam and they still struggle. But right now, they are looking like it's going to be really, really good for them. And for Liverpool, I have to worry that this is going to be, they have to worry. This is going to be a huge moment in the season that really puts them in a bad spot, because they tend to be a bit streaky. When they're scoring a lot of goals, they continue to do that for a while until somebody stops them. Now we're going to see how they rebound from taking a big, big fucking loss. Because before losing to City 5-0, they beat Arsenal 4-0. Now they lost 5. I mean, are they going to come back strong? Are they going to struggle for a long time? Is Jurgen Klopp going to lose some faith in some of his players? What's going to happen? We're going to find out, but I have a feeling that if Liverpool don't win the next game, they're going to have a long streak of some poor results. Now we have to Arsenal versus Bournemouth. Arsenal, like I said, they had a hard time in the first few weeks of the season. They came back against Bournemouth, who I expected to have a pretty decent game against Arsenal, but Bournemouth just pretty much laid down and let themselves get fucked in the ass. I mean, they just didn't even really put any effort into that. They looked like they didn't even believe half-heartedly that they deserved to be on the same pitch as Arsenal, and that really did cost them. You know, Arsenal just ran over them. 2 goals for Welbeck, which doesn't ever happen. Welbeck is a guy who has no finishing, so for him to score 2 goals Just shows you how bad Bournemouth's defending was. And then obviously Lacazette, being a tremendous striker, he got himself a goal. Good performance from Lacazette. Overall, hats off to Arsenal for coming back. Like I said, international break completely fucks with momentum. Arsenal were having awful times early on in the season. They came back, got a huge win. Now they have the opportunity to push on. Is this going to help them? You have to think that they probably will do pretty decently in the next game, but this is what happens with Arsenal every single time. As soon as they start looking good, they collapse again. So you have to expect it's going to happen again sooner or later, and probably sooner than later. So we'll see what happens with them in the next game, but I have to keep an eye on them because the Wenger out flags are already flying around. Everybody already wants him kicked out, so as soon as he slips up again, we might see him get sacked. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that bad, but it's already at that stage of the season that usually happens around January or February where everybody wants him to get the fuck out. So he's already at risk. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Arsenal, they still lack a lot. Don't get me wrong. Bournemouth, they had a great game against Bournemouth, but it wasn't a game where you were like, okay, Arsenal are back. Bournemouth just sort of pretty much laid down and let himself get fucking ass. So Arsenal have to prove themselves in the next game if they can keep on getting momentum and keep themselves somewhat close to the top of the league. I think they're now 4 or 5 points behind City and United at the top. So they have to stay close. If they drop points in the next game, that's going to be a huge loss for them. A huge moment for them and a huge moment for Wenger's career at Arsenal for the next step of his future. Now we have Brighton, who beat West Brom 3-1, and I came into this game expecting a 1-0 win for West Brom because of the fact that WBA tend to do really well in these types of games. They're masters. Tony Pulis is an absolute master of sneaking away a 1-0 win. But he went out there, and Brighton, credit to them, they had a tremendous game. And to win 3-1, that's really good for them because they've been having an awful start to the season. And this does sort of give them a little bit more hope and a little bit more, I guess you could say, momentum building forward to the next game. What about West Brom? Well, it doesn't really matter for them because they are perennial top 10 mid-table teams. They aren't really a team that goes out there expecting to do anything great. If they do well, that's good for them, but they don't really care a whole lot. At least it doesn't seem like it. They don't have a lot of ambition. They have some good players, but they don't have a manager that really has a lot of ambition. They don't have a club in general that has a foundation that's built for continuing growth. They're simply just going to be a mid-range team. So for them to lose against a team like Brighton, yes, it sucks, but it doesn't really bother them too much, I'm assuming. As long as they stay around that 10th area, then they're going to be perfectly happy. Brighton, they desperately needed this win. It is a chance for them to get closer to the teams that are around the relegation battle as well. I mean, obviously, Crystal Palace are below them now, which is definitely good for them. Crystal Palace have now lost 4 games out of 4. And Brighton, they're going to need to keep on continuing to get some results. If they can do that, then there's a chance of them staying in the Premier League. I still don't think they're going to be able to, but a 3-1 win definitely goes a long way into building momentum and building confidence in those players. Everton versus Tottenham is another game that was very surprising because Tottenham went out there and absolutely demolished Everton, who have, so far this season, shown to be a pretty solid team and a pretty tough team to beat. Everton, at home, usually are a really solid team. At Goodison Park, having such a passionate fan base and being just such an overall good team, they're usually really tough to beat there. But Tottenham, they just absolutely destroyed them. Harry Kane showed that the curse is real. The August curse is absolutely real. He has never scored a goal in the Premier League in August, and now, or at least I don't think he has. I know for a fact that he almost never scores, but I don't think he's ever scored in August in the Premier League. He comes back in September and immediately gets 2 goals. I mean, just what the fuck? The guy is an absolute legend once it comes to September forward. That's where he really hits his stride. And he's obviously going to be a huge player for Tottenham once again this season. And if he can build up momentum and if he can start scoring a lot of goals, then Tottenham can definitely be title contenders. If not, they're going to struggle a little bit to find the amount of goals they need to be scoring. And obviously destroying Everton 3-0 like that away from home, that's going to build so much momentum for them because they are a young team. They have a lot of young players, so they do sort of suffer a little bit from momentum swings and just a lot of differences in confidence levels. And when they're at full confidence, they are one of the toughest teams that you could possibly face. We're going to see what they do in the Champions League because that will also have an effect. And will Wembley continue to be a curse for them? We're going to find out. If it is, that's going to be a huge problem because they desperately need to win some games at home. You cannot afford to drop points at home if you are going to be competing for a title. But right now, they're looking good. I look forward to seeing their next game. And overall, Tottenham are still one of those top teams. And Everton, yes, they had a bad game. But going to Old Trafford this weekend, I expect them to have a pretty solid performance. At least defensively, they're going to defend well. Away from home, they're probably going to be a bit more cautious and stuff like that. United having a tough performance against Stoke City, and yes, they did win last night in the Champions League 3-0. It's still, it's going to be a test for United to go out there and face a team like Everton, who's probably going to park the bus a little bit, hit them pretty well on the counterattack. And it's going to be an interesting game between them and United. Now we have Leicester versus Chelsea, which finished 2-1 for Chelsea. And it was a pretty decent game, to be fair. Chelsea went out there and they are looking really, really solid. There were some really big warning signs in that first game when they faced Burnley and looked like an absolute shamble team. But now they are looking really, really good. Morata in particular has looked like a tremendous player. I would probably prefer him over Diego Costa, to be honest, because he seems like a guy who really works really hard for the team, and he actually is an important person in the locker room. You can tell that he is a guy who really believes in the club. He is working for the club, whereas Diego Costa is just absolutely working for Diego Costa. He's an absolute piece of shit, you can tell. He scores a lot of goals, and he's a tremendous player, but he is kind of a piece of shit. So a lot of times it's better to not have a player like that in the locker room, and having a player like Morata who works really hard for the team. He's got really, really good pace, works really, really well on the edge of the defensive line, barely on the offside line. He's just tremendous in just about every single way. His finishing is also top class. His movement's tremendous. His passing, his distribution, his holding up the play, it's just world class. He is a world class striker. He's going to do phenomenally for Chelsea all season long. And overall, it's just looking like Chelsea are going to be really, really good this season. They were looking pretty bad early on, but right now they've seemed to have turned things around and are looking really, really good. Leicester, they were 2-0 down, and they managed to get a goal back through Vardy via a penalty, which was a pretty solid penalty. I mean, he almost had that shit saved by Thibaut Courtois, but it was such a hard penalty that Courtois was barely able to get enough power on it, but it just wasn't enough to keep the ball out. Still, Jamie Vardy is firing on all cylinders. He's having quite a few goals this season. He's looking pretty good. Leicester have had a pretty tough calendar, to be fair to them. To start off the season, they've played Chelsea, United, and I can't remember who the other team is that they played that was pretty tough as well. So they've had a pretty tough start of the season. They'll probably more likely start to get some more wins as the season goes on. Start looking better. Probably finish around the top 10, 9 maybe. Mahrez in particular had a really bad game. He was making some very poor decisions. I remember at one point there was a chance where he could either just hit the pass or just keep on going. He did neither. He sort of just stopped, and it was just absolutely bad decision. He made a very, very poor decision. It really cost him because he could have easily gotten that 2-2. It was like a 2-on-2 situation there, and he just blew it. He blew it. Mahrez has got to be more decisive because him and Vardy are the two guys that are really going to be scoring all the goals, and they have got to play better. Those two have to be very, very good at finishing the chances that they get, especially against a team like Chelsea, who don't really give a lot of chances. Even though their defense has been a little bit off this season, they still are a very, very solid team who are going to score a lot of goals. So you really have to take your chances against teams like Chelsea, United, Liverpool, etc. So you have to be taking that into consideration. I do expect Leicester to improve. I don't know how much they're going to improve, but like I said, around the top 10. And Chelsea, I still don't think they're going to be able to compete in the long run for the major spots because we're going to see them once they start playing Champions League, once they start playing some of the other cups, they're going to struggle because they don't have a lot of depth on their team. But as of right now, they're going to be looking good. And as of right now, as long as they don't have to play too many games, one right after the other, then they should be fine. But later on, I expect them to struggle a bit more. Now we have Southampton-Watford, which finished 2-0 for Watford. And I'm not that surprised about this. Honestly, I expected Southampton to go out there and have a pretty good game. I expected them to have a close game, probably even a draw. But Watford have been looking tremendous so far this season. They've been having some great games. They've actually made some really solid signings. They've gotten a few good wins, especially that draw against Liverpool. And they've just been looking really, really good. So hopefully for them, they will continue to improve, and hopefully it will be an improvement for their board as well. Maybe their directors and their sporting directors will see this as a chance to invest some more money and actually improve the club and get them possibly fighting for the top 10 spots. You never know. You never fucking know. They have some pretty good players, and their manager, Marco Silva, is looking really, really good right now. I have a lot of respect for the guy. What he did last season to almost be able to save what the fuck was it? I can't remember. To save Hull was tremendous. But now, if he can continue to do this with Watford, he's going to have a tremendous season ahead of him. He's actually going to make a really big name for himself. So hats off to the guy. Hats off to Watford. Southampton are one of those teams that are borderline like top 12, top 10, more or less. Nothing more. Pretty much like West Brom. They have the quality, but they don't really go out there and really hunt down big players and try to make the signings that necessary to really make them a tough team. So it is a shame for them. But I don't think it's that big of a loss. Losing at home, obviously, is never fun, especially at St. Mary's Stadium. But I do expect them to rebound pretty well and continue to keep themselves consistently around the mid-table range. Nothing too special for either team here, Watford or Southampton, but definitely they're both being competing for those mid-table spots. Now we have the game that's most important to me, which was Stoke versus United, and that finished 2-2 in a highly disappointing game for United because we did play pretty well, but Stoke, to be fair to them, at home, are as ferocious as ever, man. They do not give up. They keep on going. They attack the shit out of you. They defend with everything they have. And they just had a really good performance. United had quite a few chances. They definitely should have finished better. Lou missed quite a few easy chances that definitely should have been finished. But still, Stoke City with Jesse Rodriguez just looked amazing. They were just a tremendous team going forward. They have a lot of heavy hitters in their team. They're not just a physical team anymore. They also have a lot of quality players. They have a lot of quality just tactics and everything. So they did a really good job there. At home, they're always tough to beat. Hopefully, United will rebound from this and beat Everton in a pretty big fashion, because now we are tied with City with 10 points at the top of the league. That sucks, but it is what it is. It's still early on in the season. Have to start winning games. I talked a bit of shit, like saying that we were going to go out there and destroy Stoke City, but then I realized, wait a minute, these guys went out there and they destroyed Arsenal, so maybe they aren't that bad of a team, and they actually show that they are a really, really good team. I may have put them a little bit too low in my expectations for the season. Maybe they should be a bit higher because of the fact that they brought in Hesse, which is also a massive signing. I don't think when I did the predictions for the Premier League, I don't think Hesse had already signed yet, so that is something that I should have taken into consideration. But still, Hesse, tremendous. He's improved that team greatly, and the fact that they also have some other really good players in there, it does really have an effect. And really, I expect them losing Arnautovic to have a bit of an effect on them, but they're looking better without him than they ever did with him. So that's definitely a good thing for them. I expect them to do pretty well, but hopefully United going against Everton, like I said, will go out there and look like they did in the Champions League game that happened last night. Dismantle Everton. They destroyed Basel, so it should be a solid performance. I'm still expecting us at home to really have a really good season. Old Trafford needs to become a fortress once again, and with Mourinho having a lot of success over the past couple seasons and last season, and not conceding a lot of goals, we still have an essentially perfect ranking when it comes to plus minus. We've only conceded 2 goals. We've scored 12, so we're having a really good season so far. And at home, if we continue to go undefeated, if we continue to play really solid at home and still do well away, then I still think we're going to have a really good season. Still a long way to go, but beating Everton will be a massive chance for us to take a bit of a lead, especially because City's next game is against Watford, who in their own right have been showing to be a really tough team, especially counterattacking. So that's going to be a really interesting game. There's plenty to look forward to next week in the Premier League. Burnley versus Crystal Palace was just the final nail in the coffin for that poor bastard Frank de Boer, and I actually kind of feel bad for him because he's not a bad manager, or at least he kind of is, because based on what we've seen at Inter and Crystal Palace, he is kind of a bad manager, but I feel like he didn't have enough time to really implement what he wanted to implement in that club, because, before Big Sam Allardyce, they had Alan Pardew, who was just an atrocious manager. Defensively, he was trash. He just had absolutely no quality to his team. Whether it be Newcastle or Crystal Palace, there was just no quality in any of his teams. So then Big Sam showed up, and he was just basically turning them into a defensive team who is pretty decent at scoring goals, especially with the players they had, who actually were pretty decent, like Zaha, Benteke, also Punchian. They had a few really good players there. Also, they had, what's his name? No, they didn't have. What's his name? Oh, not only Bolasie. Bolasie had already left, I think, so he wasn't there last season. But still, they had quite a few attacking players. And Sam Allardyce obviously always does a good job of keeping his teams from getting relegated. He's never been relegated in his career. He's always been able to save them. So that's what he does. That's his specialty. But still, I was going to take a little bit of time for De Boer, who plays a very different style from both Pardew and Allardyce, to get his style implemented into the minds of those players. He likes to play passing, possession-based football. And yes, he has some of the players set up to do that. But the team, they have to adapt, especially when they don't have great defenders. They did bring in Saka, who isn't a bad defender, but they just didn't have it. And at the end of the day, if you lose 4 games straight, especially when it's that early on, if you lose the first 4 games of the season, you have to get sacked, especially when the director, even when he signed De Boer, he was already talking about, yeah, we signed De Boer, but I'm not that convinced. I mean, why the fuck even sign him in the first place if you don't really want him? I'm just confused about that. But still, Crystal Palace, apparently they're going to bring in Roy Hodgson, which is definitely not a good manager. I mean, what are they going to do? Continue to suck? Continue to suck dick all season long and possibly get relegated? I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in Crystal Palace. They have some really good players. Fosu-Mensah, Loftus-Cheek, Benteke, Zaha. They have the good players to survive. But it's just a matter of the mentality and really getting that team to be playing the way they should be playing. We have Swansea versus Newcastle, which was a pretty interesting game because it was pretty much a stalemate the whole time until Swansea made an absolute just horrible mistake by leaving Lascelles wide open in the box off of a corner with 7 minutes to go, 8 minutes to go. Lascelles with a beautiful header, absolutely nothing the keeper could do. Great goal. And I mean, just overall, just a good win for Newcastle. Beating a team that's directly in competition with them for the relegation battle, that's a huge win. And the fact that also Swansea, having Renato Sanchez, a lot of these Swansea fans talking about how, this is our best team we've ever had. We've never had a team this complete. but they just lost their best player, Sigurdsson, and I get it. They signed Renato Sanchez, but he hasn't really been proven in the Premier League, and in that game, he didn't really show that he didn't do very well. So there's still some question marks above what he's going to be like in the Premier League. But still, beating Swansea for Newcastle is a huge, huge thing. Moving forward, that's 2 wins in a row. They have a chance to build up momentum, and Rafa Benitez is basically achieving what he's achieving in this league based on sheer managerial quality. Because the team he has is no better than the teams that Newcastle has had previously in the Premier League, like when Carver was there, back when Pardew was there, when Allardyce was there. There's just no particular quality in this team. Benitez being a top quality manager, I don't like his style. I don't really like him as a manager in general, but you can't deny the fact that he is really good. He's able to basically do some unthinkable things with this team, because if you look at the roster that Newcastle have, there's not a single player there except for maybe Gale, Shelvey on his day. Maybe even this Moreno guy is looking pretty good. Elliott, the goalkeeper's pretty good, but none of these guys are like really solid players like that you could think of. Okay, this is a real Premier League quality player. I mean, he's doing some really good things with the players he has. So hats off to him. Hats off to Newcastle. Swansea, they have got to start winning some games big time, because they're gonna start struggling even more and more if they don't start waking up and really start getting some results. I mean, interesting stuff coming for the relegation battle. There's going to be quite a few teams in there. A few teams that are actually pretty decent as well, so we'll see what happens there. But Newcastle, hopefully for them and hopefully for True Geordie, will definitely start to keep on getting some momentum. And hopefully for Swansea, they'll find a way to get some results. And Renato Sanchez, I do think he's still going to be a pretty good player for him. I don't know how good, but he has a lot of quality, has a lot of potential. And I do respect the fact that he went from Benfica to Bayern Munich, and he had the balls to go over to a small team when he probably could have gone to just about any other place in the world and been maybe not a starter but a bench player. But he went to Swansea, a place where his manager Carlo is, because he's on loan from Bayern Munich. He didn't get sold, so his manager is still Carlo Ancelotti, and the guy who manages Swansea is Clement, which is Ancelotti's second-hand man for so long. He was there with Real Madrid. He was there with even Bayern Munich for a while, maybe even with Milan. So he has been a guy under Ancelotti. So if he does perform well with Swansea and get used to the tactics, because they play the same way, then there's a chance of him getting back into the Bayern Munich team. So I do respect the hell out of his decision, and hopefully for him, because he is a really, really good young player, he will find the quality and reach back to the high levels that we all expect him to reach. Last but not least, we have the Monday game, which was West Ham versus Huddersfield. And Huddersfield were on quite the run. They were undefeated in their first 4 games, and unfortunately for them, they came against West Ham right after the international break. Because like I said, momentum swings after international breaks. Everything goes out the window. And West Ham, after having an atrocious first 3 games, conceding 10 goals in 3 games, they came out here and got a clean sheet at home, which is actually really good for them. It was their first game at home, has to be considered, because of the fact that they were setting up the London Stadium due to the the Athletics World Cup or something like that. I was actually talking to a West Ham fan in the hotel I work out, where he was telling me about that. I wasn't aware of that, honestly. He was telling me about how everything was going on with the stadium. So it's something to take into consideration. They hadn't played at home yet, which is always a big factor. So going back at home, they got a nice little win over Huddersfield. And Huddersfield, I still think they're going to be involved in the relegation battle. They play a lot of offensive football, but we've seen when they face against a team that has some decent threat offensively, they do struggle. And I mean, West Ham aren't a tremendous team. Tactically, they are in shambles half the time, but they are still a team that has Chicharito Hernandez. They have Arnautovic, who on his day is a pretty good player. They have quite a few players like Lanzini as well, who on their day are really, really good. So Huddersfield had a hard time. They lost, but they shouldn't keep their heads down too much. They need to keep their chin up and go out there and try to get another win next weekend. And hopefully for them, continue to rack up some points, because they are still pretty well set in the league. If they can continue to get some points here and there, get some wins most importantly, and even some draws here and there away from home, then they have a chance of surviving. And I do think that they're probably like among the teams that just got promoted, apart from Newcastle. Well, okay, I would say that they have a better chance than Brighton, and possibly even better than Newcastle, because Newcastle so far, they've been struggling, yes, but obviously they have a better manager and things like that. So we'll see what happens there. But either way, Newcastle and Huddersfield are both winning that relegation battle. I think one of those two will get dropped. I still think it's going to be Huddersfield, but we'll see what happens. I do have a lot of hopes for Huddersfield. I do actually like them, because I like the way they play and the fact that they pretty much never had anything in the Premier League ever in the history. I would love to see them do well. I hope to see them succeed, and hopefully next season, if they are in the Premier League, having more money, be able to attract better players and continue to improve. That is it for the video, guys. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of all the stuff I said. What do you think of that City game? Was that crazy? What do you expect is going to happen to Liverpool next? Are they absolutely going to collapse? Are they going to come back a little bit strong? Are they going to get a draw? What do you expect from them? Also, what do you think about Chelsea, United, Tottenham? What's going to happen in the next weekend in the title race? Who do you think is going to be top of the league at the end of the weekend? What do you think is going to happen? Just let me know all these things in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please soccer kick the shit out of that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you always see my upcoming videos. I have the Premier League preview coming out in 2 days. This is Wednesday right now, so Friday the video will be out. So hopefully you guys will tune into that. Also, make sure you share it with any friends if you want to share. That is very, very helpful, and I'm always grateful to anybody who does that. Thank you so much if you do. And I've been Diego from the Foot and Fist Sports Network, and I will see you in the next video.